You're listening to Health Coach Conversations, a podcast where our conversations help health coaches all around the world to level up our businesses and to get more clients. Hello and welcome. I am Kathy Sakura with the Health Coach Group and host of Health Coach Conversations. Today I am visiting with Jaclyn Downs. The topic of our talk is what to look for and look out for when choosing genetic testing and interpretation companies. Jaclyn Downs, MS, CHC, CD, is the author of the academically published book, Enhancing Fertility Through Functional Medicine, using nutrigenomics to solve unexplained infertility. Jaclyn is a functional nutrigenomics consultant that helps practitioners and clients move past puzzling roadblocks, identify and address root cause issues, and individualize protocols through the use of genomic interpretation, functional lab testing, and a meticulous intake consultation. So what is functional nutrigenomics and how does it impact our health?
Functional nutrigenomics is essentially the intersection between the interplay between nutrition and our genes. And so how our genes are affected by nutrition and also toxins and lack of nutrition, but also how nutrition influences the expression of our genes. And when I say nutrition, again, that is nutrition or lack thereof, and also toxins that can throw wrenches in our metabolic systems too. And so nutrigenomics can affect our health on so many levels because every single reaction that we have take place in our bodies is dictated by a gene. A gene makes an enzyme that causes a reaction in the body. And so when we have genetic variants, that can affect how those processes take place. Now, functional nutrigenomics are genes you can actually do something about. So these are not like your true genetic mutations like Tay-Sachs or muscular dystrophy. These are genes that we can support through nutritional cofactors and detoxification and stuff like that to support the efficiency of that gene to work properly.
So can you give me an example of what that would be?
An example, like a specific gene example?
Yeah, it was something that could be changed. Or am I asking?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right. So I'll give a general example rather than a specific gene. But so genes often require cofactors like B vitamins, B6, B12, folate, B1, B2. All of those are really, really important for so many processes to take place. And so if that gene, that enzyme that is made by that gene is dependent on nutritional cofactors, like, for instance, B12, then supplying more B12 might help to compensate for that sluggishness that genetic variant might cause. But in other cases, certain genes, when you have variants, it causes an upregulation, so it causes it to move faster. So that's why we can't just look at a few genes when we do testing, because no gene works in isolation, and there's so many factors upstream and downstream. And so getting a full comprehensive profile of your genetic blueprint is going to let you know if something's working faster or slower and how to support it based on the research of what nutritional cofactors are needed for that gene to produce that enzyme to work at the Goldilocks level.
Okay, that makes sense to me. How is functional nutrigenomics? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, sure. Yep. You can say nutrigenomics, either.
Okay. How is it connected to epigenetics?
So epigenetics is just so we're born with the genome that we have. That's never, ever going to change. But 85% roughly, what the research shows, of what determines whether that gene will express is our diet, lifestyle, toxins, stressors, all of those things. So you might have heard the saying that it is genetics that loads the gun, but it's environment that pulls the trigger. And so epigenetics are the factors that can affect whether or not that gene actually expresses. Because just because you have a genetic variant doesn't mean that it's expressing. It's these other factors that cause it to either stay off or turn on. And nutrigenomics is how the nutritional cofactors can affect the functioning, either support the function or inhibit the function of the enzymatic activity.
Okay. And then how can it be used in your business?
So the software that I use is used by so many different types of practitioners. We have eye doctors, chiropractors, acupuncturists. There's even a dentist that uses it, because really, if you know what your predispositions are for antioxidant production, antioxidant utilization and recycling, or your phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification pathway predispositions, you can really see where oxidative stress that causes inflammation, you can really see where that might be coming from. So if you have a chronic condition, any kind of itis, right? Any kind of itis means inflammation. You can look at your genes and you can see that maybe you're not making enough glutathione, or you don't recycle your glutathione well enough, or perhaps you are really predisposed to making a lot of free radicals like peroxynitrite or superoxide. And then you can know where in these pathways these genetic wrenches might be, and you can provide the appropriate support.
Okay, most of our listeners are health coaches and doctors and dietitians and nutritionists and nurses and people in the wellness area, and then life coaches. But how would this work for them? How could they work with this, or can they?
Yes, this is especially beneficial for those type of practitioners like myself as well. I get a lot of clients that have been to 3, 4, 5, 6 to 12 different practitioners, and they've tried their tried and true protocols, or they've put them on a supplement, and maybe these people had adverse reactions or the protocol didn't work. So really knowing the genetic blueprint and knowing what your genes have to say can really move past roadblocks and take out the guesswork. Because, say a certain supplement works for everybody else, but if you have a certain genetic predisposition, let's just say certain adaptogens, right? But if you are a fast metabolizer or a slow metabolizer of certain neurotransmitters, these adaptogens can affect you in different ways. And so this really, really helps to take out the guesswork, to really target and personalize protocols for really puzzling or curious patients that just seem to have adverse reactions with typical protocols. So this is really a way to fine tune and personalize each person's protocol.
What kinds of things do you want to look out for with testing and interpretation companies?
Okay, so I say that we're in the wild, wild west of genetic testing and interpretation right now. Everybody's kind of hopping on board with it. But these genetic interpretation companies are only looking at a handful of genes, sometimes only 5. And then they're only looking at clinically validated SNPs. And you can't really tell a whole lot from a handful of genes or just a couple SNPs. So one gene, when I say SNP, I mean like a variant. So we have a gene, but sometimes that gene can have hundreds of different variants. And a lot of these genetic interpretation companies are only looking at 2 or 3. And so you don't really get a full picture. The 2 or 3 could just be the tip of the iceberg, but there could be dozens or hundreds below the surface that are not being shown in their genetic report. And these companies are they're reporting about your SNP. So they're saying, well, you have this particular gene, like for instance, you have the MTHFR C677. So make sure that you take extra methylfolate. But if you have genes upstream or downstream, or if you have genetic variants that affect your B12 levels, taking a bunch of methylfolate is going to backfire. And so this can really help you to understand what type of supplements would work best for your clients, and how aggressively you can start versus how slow you should start.
It's kind of, I'm thinking while you're talking about this, it's kind of like if you say the color green goes with this color, you're not taking into account all the different shades and saturations of the color green. And so the other color may not be appropriate because you're not taking the whole thing into account, right?
Oh, yes, but so they're just reporting about your genes. So they're saying if you have this genetic variant, take this. But then you could have a different genetic variant 10 pages later in your report, and it'll say avoid that supplement. So they're not taking your personal history, your previous diagnoses, your symptoms, your diet, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. They're not taking all of that into account when they're doing your interpretation. They're just copying and pasting and putting in automated canned responses. And so that oftentimes causes analysis paralysis for the person because their report is just rife with contradictions.
So, okay, so, I just finished with an attorney a couple weeks ago on a podcast. And when you're looking at how you can practice across state lines and who can interpret like the results of this, do you have to have, if you have it specifically interpreted, do you have to have somebody in your state interpreting that? Is that how that? No,
because maybe as a geneticist, I'm not sure what those geneticists are. Their degree, they're looking specifically for genetic mutations and predispositions for actual diseases. Whereas this is just supporting the optimum function of your genes. So there is no diagnosing, treating, or prescribing that goes along with this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad that we talked about that. Okay, so this looks like a dirty word. What exactly is MTHFR? And is it as problematic as everyone says it is?
So I almost jokingly titled my book MTHFR is a gateway.
My daughter would laugh at me for that. I do that.
It is oftentimes the first gene that people hear about that opens them up to the concept that our genes can affect our health. But I think too much emphasis is placed on MTHFR. And a lot of people, I just want to say this loud and clear because there is a lot of misinformation out there by all of these influencers and these genetic testing companies and these bloggers. They are saying that MTHFR is what converts your folic acid into methylfolate, and that is incorrect. DHFR is a very, very important gene that is not recognized enough. That is involved in 2 of the 5 steps of converting folic acid into folate. And then MTHFR adds a methyl group to that folate to turn it into methylfolate. So all of your listeners now know way more than almost everybody out there, just because MTHFR doesn't convert folic acid into methylfolate. And a lot of these test companies, they aren't even including DHFR in their reports, which is just mind-blowing to me. So that's the first thing there. So like I said, MTHFR adds a methyl group to folate in order to help drive the methylation pathway that is super important for making DNA, repairing DNA, building, detoxifying, clearing hormones, neurotransmitters. Like it's involved in so many processes in the body. So I'm not discounting the importance of MTHFR, but no gene stands alone, and we can't blame all of our health challenges on one single gene.
All of this is pretty new. Are we pretty much on the edge of big changes as this comes through with things that we've been fighting for a long time?
I believe so. Yes, I do personally believe that. I think that, well, especially pharmacogenetics, they're already doing so many tests, especially on the CYP genes, which are your phase 1 liver detox pathways. And I think that everybody will, maybe not the average person is not going to know their whole genetic blueprint, but the medical community, I suspect, will be able to access your genetic blueprint to know which drug would work best for you in certain instances, should you need it, or should you, be in the hospital for some reason, or just for, chronic healthcare maintenance.
Yeah.
So yes, and even, dare I say, they might even say, as far as vaccines go, oh, well, if you have this genetic profile, then this version of the vaccine would be best for you, versus if you had this version, you have this genetic profile, then we would give you this version of that vaccine. Perhaps, maybe that's just some sci-fi stuff. I don't know, but I definitely know that the medical standard of care is going towards pharmacogenetics and personalizing it based on specific genetic profiles.
And that's true even with like mental health medicines, right?
I believe so. Yes, we all transport and metabolize neurotransmitters at a different rate depending on multiple genes in a pathway. We can't just say, oh, well, you have the COMT, so you're gonna metabolize that more slowly, because again, no gene works in isolation. So it's really important to get somebody that has been trained and certified and understands how all of this plethora of genes all interact and work together.
Make a bigger impact with our bundled impact programs, valued at $23,000, now available for just $5,565. Create your own programs with the content provided by the Health Coach Group. Elevate your practice today. Visit thehealthcoachgroup.com.
What are some examples of specific genetic variations that can impact detoxification and inflammation? And how do you approach addressing those through functional medicine and nutrigenomics?
Okay. So we have glutathione, as I mentioned earlier, is the body's master antioxidant. And so our bodies do make glutathione. Glutathione is a tripeptide. It's made of 3 amino acids: cysteine, glycine, and glutamine or glutamic acid. But those, a lot of people are taking NAC and acetylcysteine to help their body produce glutathione. But if you have variants in your GCLC or GCLM or GSF genes, which this is getting a little biochemical, but if you have certain genetic variants, you might not be able to assemble those 3 amino acids. You might not be able to take that NAC that you're supplementing and help it to form glutathione. And so you could be wasting your money, or you could be causing more inflammation. A lot of times also, so our glutathione is called the master antioxidant because it is able to recycle itself. But our genetics determine how well we are able to recycle our glutathione. Specifically, there's a really important gene in that recycling process called your GSR. And I just think of that as your glutathione recycling. And so if you have variants there, you might not recycle your glutathione as well, and it could stay in an oxidized form. And people might think that, oh, I took glutathione and I had this hurt and it made me feel really awful. That might be the case, but it might also be that you're taking this glutathione and it's staying in an oxidized form and it's not able to get reduced, and that's causing inflammation. And then there's genes involved in all of your phase 1, your phase 1 and all of your phase 2 liver detox pathways. So methylation is one of those, which that gets all of the spotlight. But there's also sulfation, and there's glucuronidation, and there's acetylation. And so there's a lot of genes within these pathways. There's genes that transport these substances across cell membranes. There's genes that are involved with the receptors of certain cells. There's genes that are involved with degradation and clearance. And so no gene works in isolation. I can't say that enough. And so knowing what your predispositions are for each of your detox pathways, we can really see what might need the most support. And especially if you pair that with some functional lab testing, like an environmental toxins test, certain toxins are cleared through specific phase 2 pathways, right? And so, like, for instance, mycotoxins, a lot of people might say, oh, well, you have run-of-the-mill mycotoxins, you've had mold exposure, take glutathione, and that should help to clear it. But the glutathione pathway is really only shown to be effective for clearing aflatoxin and ochratoxin A and aflatoxin B1. So if those aren't the type of mycotoxins that you're dealing with, that glutathione might not do a whole lot to move to move the needle on your mold problem. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think of all the time I took glutathione. I went through that phase. It's been years ago, like in 2006. And I'd go in and it cost an arm and a leg. But it was supposed to help my migraines and help get rid of metals, heavy metals in my system. Mm-hmm. And then you think, did it really work? Those genetic tests would have helped a lot and maybe saved a lot of money, huh?
Absolutely. I think it is the single best investment that you can make in your health moving forward, in your health and longevity, because you'll know where your weaknesses are. You'll know what supplements might work better than others. So basically you can see the whole picture and see where the wrenches are in these metabolic pathways and support them with the appropriate nutritive substance. Because your genes never change, one test is all you need. You don't need to do follow-up testing like you need to do with the hormone testing and stool testing and blood testing and stuff like that. One test is all you need for the rest of your life.
Yeah, because it's static, right? Okay, in your book, you talk about inflammation, and inflammation is the root of everything. How does inflammation start to affect our epigenetic DNA, and what dietary or lifestyle interventions do you recommend to mitigate it? I think that's where our health coaches come in, that they can work with customers on the lifestyle changes, and that makes a big difference. So what would you recommend?
So do you want my certain genes or my general recommendation?
Yeah, both.
Okay. So oxidative stress and inflammation they're in a cycle. When I was writing my book, I was looking up to see, well, does oxidative stress cause inflammation or does inflammation cause oxidative stress? And it's both. So they both feed each other. So it's this negative cycle. And so essentially oxidative stress is not having enough antioxidants to neutralize the free radicals. And so supporting your body with more antioxidants, whether you want to supplement with glutathione or superoxide dismutase or something like that, but there is a substance called NRF2. And I talk about NRF2 a lot in my book, and I mention it a lot in my genetic reports, because every single antioxidant reaction and detoxification reaction has NRF2 playing a part, sometimes a huge part, sometimes it's just like, not as important as other reactions, but it is pretty much involved with every single antioxidant and detoxification reaction. And so knowing what your NRF2 genes are and the genes that are related to the expression of NRF2 can show you how aggressive to be. Now, my two favorite ways to support NRF2 and just neutralize free radicals are, first off, food-based. I really love broccoli sprouts, but some people might not want to do broccoli sprouts, so they might just want to do the supplement, that's why sulforaphane is really, really a powerful supplement. Sulforaphane is shown to support and activate NRF2 exponentially more than any other substance like resveratrol. But you can just sprout your own broccoli sprouts. Make sure that you chew them very, very well. That's going to help to make them more effective. And the other support that I really like to help neutralize free radicals and support NRF2 activity is molecular hydrogen. So that modulates the NRF2 activity because, again, we need some degree of inflammation and oxidative stress, right? We need to fight off the pathogens. We need to, our body, inflammation is inherently a good thing, but it's in this modern day where it becomes chronic and low grade, that's when it becomes a bad thing. And that's when we get all these chronic conditions and puzzling things and all these itises. And so we can really make sure that we have the right amount. So molecular hydrogen modulates our NRF2 activity. So it basically kind of like an adaptogen. Like, if you need it lifted, it lifts it. If you need it dialed down, it dials it down. So it helps to modulate your NRF2 activity.
Okay, so you have a lot of things for people that they could use. You've got you've got the big 3 most impactful genes-free cheat sheet on your website. And you have a book, Enhancing Fertility Through Functional Medicine. We have a lot of specialists with that too, using nutrigenomics to solve unexplained infertility. And that's available in any bookstore, but we have a link for that we'll put underneath your podcast. And you have a mini course, Introduction to Nutrigenomics and Functional Genomic. Sometimes I have so much trouble with nutrigenomics. Saying that, my tongue gets tied. Functional genomic analysis. And that's not free, but it's only $27. So that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. And we'll give the link to that. And then you've got genetic interpretation packages. And so you actually do the interpretation yourself of the genetic test?
Yes, it is all me. It is customized, personalized, ultra personalized. So I have you fill out a really meticulous intake form. And then as I'm reviewing your genome, I often send emails saying like, hey, did you get, for instance, premature gray hair? Like, did you start graying in your 30s? Just various, how is do gallbladder issues run in your family? That kind of stuff. So it is really, it's more personalized than you're going to get from any other service by far. Even though my book is academically published by Taylor and Francis, and it's geared towards fertility practitioners and lay people, it really just looks at common but lesser known root causes of oxidative stress and inflammation. And that is at the heart of all kinds of issues. So I have chapters on histamine intolerance and oxalates and iron dysregulation beyond just anemia, and fatty acid utilization and detoxification, the proper way to detox. And I name all kinds of genes in that book. So it's not just going to be talking about MTHFR. You'll learn a lot of genes in that book as well. So don't be scared off if fertility is not your area, because you'll really gain clinical pearls. I remember I did an Instagram post and I said, like, just name a page number. I guarantee you, though, there will be a clinical pearl. And so people would just type in page numbers, and I had a lot of fun.
Oh, but that was
reading.
Fun.
Yes, it was. It was. So you can scroll down. It was a while ago on my Instagram, but it's just filled with clinical pearls. So practitioners are going to love it. Great. And I also have an affiliate program for practitioners that want to add genetic interpretation to their practices, but they just don't have the time or the wherewithal to learn a whole other modality, because it's like drinking from a fire hydrant. So anytime you just go onto my resources page at jaclyndowns.com, and then you can sign up as a practitioner for my affiliate program, and then just share your link. And so if any of your clients or patients buy any of one of my packages, you'll get $50.
Okay, so just to be clear, then the affiliate or the coach or the doctor, whoever's referring that person to you, would send that person to you. They would get the genetic test through you, and then they would also have you interpreting the test, correct?
Yes, and then they can share. So when I do interpretations, I do a typed report, and that has all kinds of background information. It has a lot of action steps, things you can implement right away. And then I make a video of me going through your genetic report and the typed report, so my summary. And then so I provide you with that typed report and the video of me going through your genome in the software and your report. And then the videos are generally about 45 minutes to an hour. And you're welcome to share the report or the video or both with your practitioner, or I guess I should say that their clients and patients can share it with them. And then that way they have some extra tools in their toolkit, or maybe some things that were not discussed before, maybe something that wasn't even on their radar. Maybe they have like a lot of histamine variants. So a lot of genetic variants related to histamine, but they're not having your typical hay fever allergy type symptoms, right? And maybe that never would have even been on your radar had they not done the genetic interpretation.
Right. Well, and that sounds like a really safe way to stay in your scope of practice and still be able to offer something important, right?
I agree. Yes.
So, approximately what does the genetic test and the interpretation cost?
That depends on if you want a kit or if you have a previous 23andMe upload. And then that also depends on how comprehensive of a report you want. So my comprehensive full package, you can send me previous lab work and I'll incorporate that into your report and you get everything that my software covers. Now, I don't go through gene by gene by gene. That report would take months for me to get through. But based on what that person put in their health history, what they've reported in my emails, asking questions, what their symptoms are, what their diagnoses are, what their goals are, that's where I know to go in the software to look and see that's how I know how to navigate their report, basically. So what they tell me, what they report to me, lets me know how to provide the best interpretation for them.
Okay. All right.
And so the price, the base price is anywhere from $9.99 to $1,700 or $1,800.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. I've heard higher prices than that. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. They are not as comprehensive. I can guarantee that.
Okay, so thank you for being here with me today. You were very informative and easy to talk to and easy to listen to. Thank you. We'll put all these links at the bottom of the podcast and anybody can reach you through, there's even a Calendly link to set an appointment for a consultation, but we'll have links for the affiliate program, for the interpretation packages, for the course, for the fertility book that has a lot of information on genetics in addition to just the fertility, and a lot on inflammation. And then there's also the Big 3 Impactful Genes free cheat sheet. So we'll have all those links on the bottom of the podcast so everybody can find it.
Kathy, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the show. If you liked what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes.